Hello and welcome to Arab TV. I'm Vic Zikoor, your host for this evening. And guess what? We've got a guests here that we see once every 4 years. Now, what could that be? What could come to us once every 4 years? That's the elections. So, every election, what we try to do is we bring experts to talk to us about some important propositions and about how do we act. Those experts happen to be from the League of Women Voters. So this evening, I'm very happy to have representatives from the League of Women Voters. We have three with us right now. Two of them are with me in the room, in the studio, and then later on we'll bring the third person. So I'd like to welcome Carol Lathrop and Shelley, what's your last name? Saini.
Yeah.
Shelley Saini.
Thank you.
And they're both from the League of Women Voters. And we're going to start with Carol. And I want to start with you. Just give us a little understanding of who can vote and who cannot vote in this country.
Okay, you can vote if you're a citizen of the United States and a resident of the state of California. And if you're 18 at the time of the election, you can register before you become 18, but you have to be 18 at the time of the election. Now, those in prison or on parole are not allowed to vote. However, if a person has completed parole, then they are eligible to re-register to vote. And if you have not been judged mentally incompetent, you can vote.
So how do they know if somebody is judgmentally incompetent?
Well, that would be, I believe, a state function determines that, and I
So
don't know the process.
Yeah, they might have some kind of a circular that will go out to the voting people, tell them Vic Zikoor just had a problem, don't accept him to vote, right?
Right. And places where you can register, actually you can go online and print out the form, sign it, and mail it in to the Registrar of Voters. Or you can contact the Registrar of Voters. I believe post offices and libraries have the forms necessary, and at many public events, the League of Women Voters will be there to register you.
And how far back does somebody has to register to vote so they can vote? Can they do it the same day?
No, they should register by October 20th.
October is the deadline, October 20th.
Yes.
So this program is going to be on the air before October 20th.
Yes.
You guys, if you have not registered to vote right now, go get the form. You can get it, as Carol said, from the internet, from the post office,
Yes.
from the League of Women Voters, from other organization, I guess,
Yeah.
and fill it up and send it in so that you could vote.
Yes, absolutely.
Why is it important to register and vote?
Well, everyone participates in the government process, whether they think they do or not, just by drinking the water, by flipping on a light. Government is involved at some point in their lives. So it behooves us to become involved in how our government works.
So it is us that makes the decision of who comes to office?
Yes.
It is us who makes the decision what proposition passes, what measure passes?
That's right. We vote on those.
Right.
We elect the officials who run our government. So we need to stay involved.
And then we elect them, and then we're not happy with them afterwards.
Well, don't re-elect them.
That's democracy.
Yes.
So you
it is.
elect Mr. X or Miss X, and when they don't do a good job, we don't elect them the next time.
That's right.
And if they do a good job, we re-elect them.
Yes.
So that's the democracy. Okay? So now we know why should we vote, because we want to give our voice for the people who are going to run our lives here, right?
Yes.
Okay. What else do we vote for besides people?
Well, we vote on propositions, and the league will be discussing several of those propositions today.
Okay, so we vote for positions of people, running for office, and for propositions. Define a proposition for me.
Well, it's either coming from a group of people who are proposing a condition of government or a change in a condition of government. And if they get enough people to sign in order to place that on the ballot, then we have to vote on it. And also the legislature can place a proposition on the ballot.
Okay, and if the people vote for the proposition, then it becomes a law?
That's right.
I see.
That's right.
Okay.
Some of those that are on the list this year are constitutional amendments, and we will differentiate between that when we discuss the propositions.
So constitutional amendments to the United States Constitution?
No, the
Okay.
state of California
Our
Constitution.
state constitution?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad I clarified that.
Yes, and the
You scared me a bit.
propositions on the ballot are
Okay.
state propositions.
Okay, okay. So on the ballots then, when we go to vote, they're going to be positions of people running to office. They're going to be propositions. Anything else on the ballots besides that? That's it, right?
Well, there are going to be some local measures,
Measures, okay.
and we are not prepared to discuss
No,
those
we don't,
today.
but just to understand what is the measure.
Okay, in San Jose, there's going to be one on base pay. There's going to be a water issue. The other cities within the county, I'm not sure what those
Yeah, okay,
situations
Okay.
are.
okay. So.
But I know we've got the minimum wage here in
Okay.
San Jose.
Okay. And what is the basic difference between the proposition and the measure? Do you know? Or is there?
And a local measure?
Yeah.
Well, only people who live in San Jose are going to vote on this
Local measure.
minimum wage.
Okay, okay. So the measures are locally for the city people to vote on. Propositions could be wider, the county-wide or statewide.
Now, the water issue will be voted on those who live within the county and are serviced by the water district.
Yeah. So now, what is this business of smart? You have a smart
Smart voter?
voters.
Okay, it is it's becoming a famous website, and it contains everything you need to know about voting. It has information about candidates. It does not tell you how to vote, who to vote for, but it does have statements submitted by the candidates on the website. We have information about all the ballot measures. It will tell you where you vote if you're already registered, or tell you how to get registered if you're not registered yet.
Okay. So I'm going to jump into the next subject. We're going to talk about 4 propositions. And I understand you're going to talk to us about the first one?
I'm speaking about Proposition 32.
32.
Yes, and that proposition prohibits political contributions by payroll deduction. And it also prohibits contributions to candidates. It is an initiative statute. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the proposal states that it changes the state campaign finance laws to restrict state and local campaign spending by public and private sector labor unions, and by corporations, and by government contractors. Okay, these restrictions don't affect spending for federal offices such as President of the United States or members of Congress. It's strictly for state and local situations. Okay, this proposal bans the use of payroll deductions to finance spending for political purposes. So a union, for example, cannot have a payroll deduction without the permission of the person,
Oh, so they cannot have automatic payroll deductions?
not for political purposes.
Okay.
Okay. There are some other avenues where the deduction can be made, but not for political purposes.
Okay. So what's the benefit of this proposition and what's the disadvantages of it?
Well, it's more fair to the union member, but it's going to be a detriment to a person running for an office, because the money that the union collects cannot be made specifically for a candidate, for example. So, this measure also prohibits political contributions by corporations and unions, either directly or to committees, political committees. Okay. Independent expenditures are allowed through this measure. It also, if it is passed, this limits the authority of government contractors to contribute to elected officials, you know, in order to sway them. So it prevents contributions to elected officials who play a role in awarding contracts.
Okay. So you've given us both sides of the coin for that proposition, right?
Yes. And I can tell you who supports it.
Okay.
Okay. Supporters include small business owners, farmers, educators, and taxpayers. Opponents include individuals opposed to special exemptions from campaign finance rules.
Very good. So, okay, we're done with that, right? Or do you have anything else?
I think that covers it. Oh, I should mention that there are some fiscal effects if this measure passes. There would be increased costs to investigate alleged violations of the law, and also to respond to requests for advice.
Very good.
So essentially administrative costs.
Okay. So now we have 4 propositions to talk about. We talked about one, the 3 more. We're gonna cover the 3 more in 10 minutes. So you're gonna talk about proposition number 31, state budget, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
So what is it?
so Proposition 31 focuses on, like you said, the state budget and state and local governments. In a broad sense, it proposes changes in responsibilities of the local government, the legislature, which is both the state assembly and the Senate, as well as the governor. And it also proposes changes in different aspects of the state and local governments and how they would work. To give some background before I get into the specifics of the proposal, so every year the state lawmakers and the governor have to approve a budget for the general fund of California. That general fund includes, prisons, programs like education, health, and so on forth. And so the budget has to be balanced with planned spending and then expected revenue. So this proposition is focusing on 4 changes. The first one being that the budget would be approved for 2 years rather than 1 year. So say in January, the governor will decide to propose a budget for July, which is the beginning of the fiscal year. Yeah. He or she will be then proposing it for that July and the following July.
Right.
And then from there can give updates for the budget. So it's changing the process like that. It also is a change for any new law that would call for more than $25 million for the cost of that law per year. Those lawmakers have to find a way to pay for those profits, whether that is through spending cuts or tax cuts. You have to find some cut in the budget to pay for it. The third is that in financial emergencies, the governor would be given greater power to cut spending in order to balance the budget. And then the final is that local governments would be able to set up new ways to coordinate, to provide services for their people. And Proposition 31 would allow for the state to transfer money to the local government. And so some effects of that on our budget for the state would be that transferring funds from the state to local would mean that the state revenues obviously would decrease as the local would increase. And the probability for that would be about $200 million every year revenue. And for the other parts of the proposition, it's hard to say what the probability of revenue and things like that would be, because there's just different elements as to who would participate in it.
Right.
It's hard to say.
Okay, I think we can leave it at this, because we have two more propositions and I need to bring somebody else to talk about them. So, Shelley, thank you so much for coming over.
Thank you for having
me. Carol, appreciate all the information as always.
Welcome.
And we're going to get to that smart voter.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we need to get to your website and watch out.
Absolutely.
So, and then everybody again, don't forget to go and get registered if you're not. So, part one is done. We're going to now go to part two in about, just we'll take a little break here. Thank you very much. So welcome back, and for this segment we'll continue what we were talking about last time, which is we talked about Proposition 31, and we have also Jim Lathrop here he was going to help us talk about two other propositions, and that's number 38 and which other one? 30 and 38. Okay, so welcome Jim. Thank you for coming again to the program. Now, just before we finish the first part, you were talking about the number 31, and just give us the who supports it and who opposes it.
Okay.
Or did you give us the pros and cons?
I'll give that as well.
Give that
Okay.
too. Okay.
So the stated pros for this, or the proponents say that it requires a real balanced budget and stops billions of dollars from being spent without public review, so people can now see the money. And then it also encourages more collaboration and creative problem solving with the local government. Opponents say that it may mean well, but it gives the governor too much power, and it also creates many complicated provisions that could come up in court, and also that it lets local governments, gives them the opportunity to leave out some important regulation like environment or other things. So supporters of this are Taxpayers for Government Accountability, and opponents are Californians for Transparent and Accountable Government.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Shelley.
No, thank you.
And now we turn to Jim. Jim, you've been with the League of Women Voters for a long time, because I've had you on this program several times already.
At least 4 years, yes.
4 years, huh? At least 4 years. That's a good one. So you're gonna. What do you do with the League of Women Voters besides coming on TV?
Whatever they tell me to do.
Okay. So you're a volunteer there.
I volunteer.
Okay.
My wife volunteered me. You've
Okay.
talked with her. so.
Right. Okay. So now you're gonna talk to us about Proposition 30.
Yes, Proposition 30. If you remember several months ago when the legislature was having a rough time passing a balanced budget, and they finally, because they could not raise money, and they could not get something through to raise taxes, so they pulled a fast one, basically. They created this balanced budget that will be balanced only if this proposition passes. What the proposition wants to do is raise income tax on people who earn more than $250,000. It'll be a sliding scale for the upper 1%. And then they also want to increase the sales tax that everybody pays by 0.25%. Doing this, they estimate that this will bring in about $6 billion and that will be enough to make the budget that they passed balanced. Now, the income tax increase will be for 7 years, starting this year. The sales tax will be for 4 years, starting January 1st. So these are the two things that they want to raise. Now, if this doesn't pass, their budget will no longer be balanced, and so they have an automatic cutback of about $6 billion. Most of it will come from schools. $5.3 billion will come out of schools.
So the question I have is the taxes to be increased on the people who earn more than $250,000.
Yes.
Is that a household income or individual income?
That's the individual. If it's a household, it's
Yeah, because that's going to be tough for us.
500,000. So
Okay.
yeah, it's quite a bit. Now, there is another competing measure, which is Proposition 38, that was proposed by one person, Molly Munger, who's becoming fairly well known because of this. Now, her proposal is that we increase the income tax for almost everybody. If you earn more than $7,500 a year, you will have an increase. And this increase for the low-income people will be like 0.4%. If you're on the higher scale, it could be as much as a 2.2% raise of the. So if your tax was 10%, it would be 12%. Okay, this is going to last for 12 years. And the money for the first 4 years, 60% of this will go through kindergarten through 12th grade. 30% of it will be used to pay down the state debt, which we have a sizable debt. And 10% of it will go towards early childhood education programs. Now, we can go in a little more on that, but that's the basic idea on the two. Now, if you compare the two, the Prop 30 was going to raise about $6 billion. Prop 38, they estimate, with the way that works, it's going to raise about $10 billion. Now, the question is, what happens if neither of them pass? Well, if Proposition 30 does not pass, there will be the immediate cutback to balance the budget. If Prop 38 passes, there will be more money available, and maybe something will fudge, and so the cutback may not be quite as severe, but that's not guaranteed. Now, if you have the idea that, well, maybe we should raise taxes just to be able to balance the budget, but I don't know which one of these to vote for, if you decide, well, let's vote for both of them, what will happen? They're set up, each one is set up so that if it passes and if it gets the most votes, it will take effect, and any other tax increase will not take effect. So if they both pass, the one that gets the most votes will be the one that does the taxes. Except Prop 30 does a couple other things. You may remember that the legislature has passed off some things to the counties, such as nonviolent criminals. They're putting them in the county jails. Some parole work is being done by the counties, and also substance abuse treatment is to be done by the counties. Now, this year they gave the counties, or the local governments, $6 billion to do this. What they want to do is put in the Constitution something that says we will always give money to support this. There's this fear that if they give it to the counties and fund it this year, they might not fund it next year, and the counties will be stuck with it. So that would, if both measures pass, that will always go in. So anything not tax related from Proposition 30 will go.
Okay. So anything more about the propositions that you talked about? No. We're done, right?
That pretty well
So
done.
now, what I want to do is I've got 4 more minutes or 5 more minutes.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick one I want you to talk about, or do you want to pick one? Do you want to talk about?
Go ahead.
Okay, let's talk about the death penalty.
Ah.
So
Okay.
which one is that?
That's Prop.
Or how about if we do the 3 strikes law?
Oh, the 3
36.
strikes.
That's more exciting, huh?
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
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 You know, the three strikes law was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to a problem. That if people keep getting sent back to jail, maybe they ought to stay in jail. So the 3 strikes said, okay, you get convicted 3 times and you're going to spend life in prison. Well, that had some ill effects. One, it crowded the prisons a little more, and we've already got overcrowded prisons. It also loaded up the courts, because if somebody's already been convicted of 2 crimes, they, instead of pleading guilty for a small sentence, they're going to have to go to court. So that's going to pile up the courts. And so they decided that, you know, maybe that's not so good. If the third thing is not a serious crime, maybe we shouldn't throw them in jail for life. And that's really all it's trying to do. Some district attorneys don't like that. Some think it's a good idea. So,
I don't know. Okay. Do you have one you want to talk about? Or shall we give it to Jim? We got 3 more minutes. What
Jim's
is-
a lot more educated than I am.
Okay.
We got these
So
troubles.
Jim, you pick one now. I picked the one about the 3 strike.
well, which one do you like?
Well, it's up to you. I could talk about the capital punishment.
Capital punishment. That's been going along for many, many years. When I was in college, the famous case was Carroll Chessman. You may or may not remember him. He was one of the first jailhouse lawyers that he had been convicted of rape and murder and was condemned to the death penalty. And he, while sitting in jail waiting for the sentence to be carried out, he learned a lot about law, and he managed to appeal his case and took it up to the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, several times before he was eventually executed. But that brought a lot of protest that maybe, capital punishment isn't such a good idea. And this was back in the, early 60s, late
Wow.
50s. So this has been an ongoing concern of people. A lot of people say, that's terrible. And what if the guy's innocent?
Right.
So maybe that's not a good idea. But we've been talking about it for 50, 60 years now. Finally got on the ballot. I don't know if it's a good idea or not. There are arguments both ways. That what do you do if the guy that's in prison can't get any worse from trying to break out of prison and killing a couple guards on the way out? Do you eliminate the penalty?
So who's against it?
Uh,
Yeah.
That I haven't looked
With
right
some-
now as to where
Yeah.
the funding is
Yeah,
yet.
yeah,
So.
that's where we're. So if you go to the smart, you find there.
Smart
there-
Voter will give you some information. Another
Right.
place to look is the State Secretary of State has a website
Okay.
that will give you the information as to who has contributed how much to each of these propositions.
right.
It's a great resource.
Yes, yeah. I tell you what, we run out of time. We've got 30 more seconds. So what I would like to do is, first of all, thank the League of Women Voters for coming. Shirley is the first time guest on this show. Thank you for coming. And
you.
Carol was here earlier. Say thank you to Carol. But don't forget, we need people to go out to vote. So in order to go out to vote, it's a 2-step deal. If you have not registered, register. If you are going to be out of the country, do an absentee ballot. If you need to learn more about it, go to the Smart Voter at the League of Women Voter website, and it's easy to find. Nowadays, just Google anything and you'll find it. So I don't even need to repeat it, right? So Jim, thanks again, and Sherry, thank you so much. And let's see you here same time next week. So please stay tuned to this program. And thank you for watching us. Good night.